Hello, everyone. My name is Jamell Henderson, and I want to welcome you to our very first episode of the Vanguard. This show, I should say, is proudly sponsored by Young Boss Media, and I'm very honored to be working alongside them in this wonderful endeavor to bring civics and political education to your television, your laptop, and even your phones. It's interesting how time develops as we go along in this world. I remember growing up, it was just on the TV screen. Now we have several options. So it's amazing how the world evolves. But I want to welcome you all to the Vanguard. My name is Jamell Henderson, as I mentioned before. And just to give you a little bit about who I am 34 years old. I am a proud four-time college graduate. I received a associate's degree first in business administration from the Borough of Manhattan Community College, class of 2011. Then I went on to Brooklyn College to receive a bachelor's in political science in 2015. Then I went on to Baruch College through the National Urban Fellows Graduate Program, which was an intense 14-month MPA program, graduated in 2016. And just recently this year, I graduated with my second master's in public policy at the Graduate Center here in Manhattan. And so I have a very strong knowledge and passion, not only in teaching and encouraging people to be civically engaged, but it's very important for me to make sure that you all have the power and the resources and the tools that you need to not only be civically engaged, but to be an active participant in today's democracy known as America. And so I'm here to not only educate you, to engage you, but to also encourage and empower you that you have the strongest voice in this democracy. You have the strongest voice in this city. You have the strongest voice in this borough because you're the one that is consistently going about the daily life living in our great country. And so it's very important that you know the tools and the resources that you have so that way when you go forward as you excel in your respective careers or even just want to see a change happen in your community, you not only know who the stakeholders are, but you also know, the importance of getting policy passed as well as being an active voter and a participant in our daily democracy. So today, we're just going to give you a little bit of the basics. We're going to talk about, what democracy is, and we're going to talk about the impact of how politics play in our entire lives. So when you hear politics, obviously, it is a very dense and rather boring subject for most people. Not everyone has the passion and excitement to talk about politics the way I do, because it's something that's studied. And political science pretty much is the study of power and how governments work, how people move, how people shape, how people utilize their power. You can also utilize, add politics being synonymous with leadership, with influence, with power, and how people, make decisions. Some good, some bad, some indifferent. But the fact of the matter is that we're all active participants in this daily democracy. Now, when I ask the question, what is a democracy, many people don't know exactly what it means. So I'm going to give you the definition according to Merriam-Webster. According to Webster, democracy means a government in which the supreme power is vested in the people and exercised by them directly or indirectly through a system of representation, usually involving periodically held free elections. The key in that definition is the power that is vested in the people and exercised by them. So what does that mean? That means all of us have the final say in who we want to see govern and participate in our respective government. The problem is that for many years, many decades, if you will, it has not been portrayed to you to let you know and understand that you have the power to actively participate, right? One of the best examples that I like to share is the importance of voting. Now, I understand that it's very important for everyone to be registered to vote, but if you don't understand why it's important for you to vote or how powerful your vote is, then you're not going to be necessarily inclined to be an active participant. Well, that's where I come in. it is my job to teach you and help you to understand the importance of your vote, but not only the importance of your vote, the importance of how you play a crucial role in this democracy as a constituent, as a leader in your community, and someone who's one day going to actually rise up and make a difference by either running for office or being an active participant. And so we all play a big role in this democracy, and it's very important that we see ourselves in a way that is unprecedented, right? So before I even get to that, I said politics affects everything that we do, right? And if you think about it, it really does. If you look at your relationships, you have to make compromise in order to get certain things done, right? You have to negotiate, and there may be a deal that you may accept or not accept. But these are the beautiful things. Sometimes you win some, sometimes you lose some, but you keep going because you believe in the pursuit of something greater. That's greater than you, that's greater than me, that's greater than us. And so we all have the ability to participate in politics in a way that we can understand. And so I'm here to guide you and show you how that works. And we're going to, for the next several weeks, several episodes, we're going to talk about how important you play a role in each level of government, but not only how important you play a role in each government, but also understanding the importance of coalitions and community building as well as organizing. Because at the end of the day, the people do make the difference, and we see that throughout our history. So let's begin with talking about voting. Now, what does it mean to vote? Again, I love words, so you'll hear me using a lot of vocabulary to help you to get an understanding of where I'm coming from. So according to the dictionary, vote is defined as a usually form of expression or opinion or will in response to a proposed decision, especially one given as an indication of approval or disapproval, motion candidate for office. Now, we all make votes in our daily lives, some way, somehow. All right, if we can't make a decision where we're going to go to eat, we take a vote. If we can't decide what movie we're going to go to, we take a vote. If we can't, if we're not able to figure out, which mall we're going to shop at, we take a vote. If we're trying to figure out, who's going to do the dishes or who's going to clean the bathroom, we always take a vote because we want to exercise our right to our opinion, right? One person may say yes, the other person may say no. But if it comes together in a coalition where there's a majority rule, then that counts. And so voting happens every day. We vote on our jobs, we vote in our personal lives, we vote as we're traveling, we're voting, while we're being active in our respected industries. We're always doing something to express our opinion and our voice. It's the same thing that we're doing in politics. Your vote is your voice. And like I like to tell people, is consider yourselves a shareholder in this business called the United States of America. If you look at it from a business standpoint, right? And as a shareholder, you have a percentage of the stock in terms of how this country governs. Your impact of your vote definitely plays a larger role as you zero in more locally, but on the national level, you still play a big role. And so by you not participating, you absence yourself from being a comprehensive voice in our democracy. And if you're not present, therefore your voice, let alone your representation, is not there. And so it's important that not only do you vote, but you be an active voter, because that's the only way we're going to be able to change things. Outside of that, there's another big tool, which I'll talk about a little bit later, in making sure that our democracy stays governed going forward. But we understand the importance of voting. Now, let me tell you the power of our vote, right? As of right now, there are currently over 328 million people living in the United States of America. That's it. We're not talking about citizens, non-citizens, immigrants. We're just talking about people in general. There are 328 million people living in the United States of America. Now, as of today, there are over 242 million people who are 18 years old and over. Okay? So now, As you see, we're starting to break it down. There's 324 million people, and of that 324 million people, there are over 242 million people who are 18 and over. Now, of that 324 million, as you see how we're breaking it down, there are over 222 million citizens who are 18 and over. So now we talked about 242 million people in general that are 18 and over, but now we're sifting it down to citizens. So now there's over 222 million citizens who are 18 and over. Let me give you some previous data points from a few years ago. It's about 5 years ago. So as of 2014, for example, there were over 142 million citizens registered to vote. Of that number, only 92 million are deemed active voters. That means they actively participate in our daily democracy. In the 2012 presidential election, over 126 million voters participated. In 2016, that number went down dramatically to about a little bit under 110 million, okay? Many people, as you know, if you read the newspapers and read the articles, many people chose to stay home because they could not decide whether or not they was going to support Hillary Clinton or Donald Trump. And as a result, Donald Trump became our president, right? Now, within the 2016 presidential election, 12% of the vote was catered to African Americans. 12% of the vote was also Hispanic Latinx, 4% of our fellow Asian brothers and sisters, as well as the white vote, which was 69%. Now, that voting strength definitely decreased over time, but they still played the majority role. However, the minority vote, as you will, consists of nearly 30% of the national vote. So we do play a big role in how our democracy governs going forward, especially on the national level. We all know that on the national level, every demographic has a major stakehold in the democracy. So we know that a president cannot get elected without the African American vote. You have to have at least 1 to 2%. You can't get elected without the Hispanic Latinx vote. You know, as you know, they are the rising population in our country, and they say within about maybe next 20 to 25 years, they will be the majority population in the United States, which is big. That's a major difference. But we also have to know and understand that when it comes to our voting, that if our issues and our ideas are not presented at the table, then we are missing out, and therefore our voice is not being heard, let alone considered. So you see the importance of the power and strength in our vote. Now imagine if every presidential election, every midterm election, we came out in record numbers every single time, whether it was an important year or as we call an off year where there's not really major elections happening. If we were to constantly participate, it will make a big, big difference. But our vote plays a big, big role in this democracy. And so by voting, you're not only being present at the table, but you're also making sure that you are the chief representative of your community, of your, your gender, of your race, of your religion, of your society. And it's very important that you be consistently active, because as someone who knows and understands how politics works, the first thing any candidate, whether incumbent or a challenger, they look at is to see who has the strongest votes within their community. And those votes are determined by the 3 levels of voting. You have the prime, which is the general, you vote at least once, and you say, I did my duty, and that's that. But then there's the double prime voter who kind of votes quite often, but not as active as the triple prime voter, which is the person who votes on every level. Doesn't matter if it's a midterm year, if it's an off year, they're actively participating and voting. They have the knowledge to understand who are the candidates that will be on their ballot, as well as understanding the issues that are on the line. And so elected officials and candidates tend to go for those triple prime voters first, because they are the most powerful within the community. They have the largest influence, and they're able to dictate to others who they should support. I am a triple prime voter. So as a triple prime voter, one of the exciting things is that, yes, the elected officials and candidates have to come and cater to me. But at the same time, you can get overwhelmed with a whole bunch of information through the mail or email because they are really trying to gather your vote, because they understand that if I'm voting for a candidate or incumbent, they know that my influence will inspire others to do the same. So imagine if we lived in a society where you had 50% of the city's vote consistently as triple prime voters. That can change the tide of who gets elected in office and who represents us, let alone the initiative that comes on our ballots. It makes a big difference. And so within our votes, not only do we get to be at the table, but we consistently are making sure that we are present and that our voices are heard in a way that not only these candidates and incumbents will understand, but to know that if you don't do what you're supposed to do, there will always be an opportunity for another election day. And I think a lot of candidates as well as incumbents tend to forget that. Now, if we look through our history, and I can go through different races, that there are plenty of opportunities for individuals like you and I to step up and break that barrier and go for those positions. You know, one of the greatest presidents, in my opinion, Barack Obama, said that if you don't like what you see in your communities, organize, grab some petitions, and run for office. Something that you haven't heard a president say, as far as my knowledge, ever. To encourage the everyday constituent to participate and run for office, that's major. And so we have an opportunity out there to really step up and be, you know, not only the faces in our democracy, but to be the change makers that's going to help this country be the goal that we are looking to be, which is a more perfect union. So let me give you some background in terms of the political leadership throughout the United States history. And I just want to use as an example the African-American political leadership throughout the United States history. And to go and show you that while these numbers may be rather low, we should look at it from a positive perspective and know and understand that there are opportunities out there in store for us. So let's take a look. So first, we know that throughout the entire United States history, we have elected one African-American president, who was the 44th president of the United States, Barack Obama. We also have two African-American Supreme Court justices throughout the United States history, which was Thurgood Marshall and Clarence Thomas. In terms of senators, we have over 10 senators throughout the U.S. history. We have over 175 representatives throughout the United States House of Representatives. We have 7 governors and a little bit over 100 mayors of cities that are populations of 50,000 or more. So when you hear those numbers, it sounds very low, but again, there's opportunity. And throughout this course of this show, I'm going to be telling you the importance of getting involved, because if you don't get involved, then our presence is not at the table. And that goes for all races, those who are watching, you know, this amazing show. So now, when I tell people that your voice plays a major role, it impacts everything that we do on a political level. And what we tend to realize and understand is that it not just the impact of political, ideology doesn't happen from the top down, it happens from the bottom up. And we, as individuals, are the nucleus of that democracy. Now, what do you mean by that? If I say you're the nucleus, well, I'm telling you that if we're looking at it from a federal level, right, we have the entire United States of America, right? And within the United States of America, you have the region that you live in. And within that region, you have the state that you live in. And within that state that you live in, you have the city that you live in. And within that city that you live in, you have the borough or province or township that you live in. And within that township, you have your neighborhood. And within that neighborhood, you have your block. And within that block, it's you. Your household, right, has the nucleus of how our democracy works, because within your household you have values, principles, and morals that you govern by, right? And anything that happens, of course, within the home also filters out in that same aspect. And so when you look at being a participant in our democracy, you're looking at how does it begin with you, right? Because an elected official, a candidate, can come in and say all of these promises, and yes, they may be likable, they may be popular, they may be, they're full of charisma. However, if their policy agenda or their ideology does not impact you at home, then how will it impact others going forward, let alone the radius of impact that you have within your respective society? So, a representative democracy, for example, is a system of government which all eligible citizens vote on representatives to pass laws for them. These are people from the president all the way down to your local county committee person, right? In the United States, we not only elect the president and members of Congress, we also elect local and state officials. And all of these elected officials listen to the populace and do what is best for the nation, state, or jurisdiction as a whole. Now, we've seen some amazing elected officials, but we've also seen some elected officials that have not done the right job. They have not thought about the people. They focused on power instead of people. And as a result, our communities have suffered. But we're starting to see a rise in people who are looking for authentic leadership, as well as those who's going to do their best. And that's what we ask for at the end of the day, right? And so when we look at how we represent, when we elect people who represent our communities, we should be thinking about how do they impact me at home? Then how do they impact our block? How do they impact our borough, our township, our city, our state, and eventually our nation? What tends to happen is that we look at it from a top-down perspective instead of from a bottom-up perspective. We expect that the president of the United States, for example, is going to be the one to implement change that is supposed to make a tremendous impact. And yes, while the president has that authority to do that, those policies do not take effect right away. The policies that do take effect right away is the ones that are closest to home. And it is very important that we all pay attention to the politics that focus closest to home, because a great person said all politics are local. Anything that happens that impacts your community, that impacts your home, that impacts your schools, your working life, and everything happens on the local level. You will feel the effects of policy more on the state and city levels than you will ever on the federal level. So let's take a look. As I told you before, the impact of who we are and how we participate all begins at the most basic local level of our government, which is within our city council chambers, within our borough council chambers, within our community boards, within our precinct boards. Like the most basic things that you would normally not think of, they all play a vital role into the way we participate in our democracy. So let's take a look at this, right? You have the United States of America, for example. Like if I was to take a look at right where I live, for example, you have the United States of America, and within the United States, we live in the northeastern region. Within the northeastern region, we live in the state of New York. Within the state of New York, we live in the city of New York. Within the city of New York, I live in the borough of Brooklyn. Within the borough of Brooklyn, I live in the Crown Heights community. And within the Crown Heights community, I live on my block and then my home. You see how it all plays a role. Now, if we had to look at that in terms of governance, of course, we have the President, Congress, and Supreme Court at the highest level. Then we have the U.S. Court of Appellates and District Courts that play a major role in terms of countering policies on the federal level. Then we look at the state level, which we have our governor, lieutenant governor, state controller, state chambers, and that leadership within the both houses and assembly and senate chambers of our state government. Then within the state of New York, you have City Hall, which is governed by the mayor, and then within the mayors, within the city of New York, you have the borough, which is governed by the borough president. Then we have our community boards, our precinct boards, our local firehouses, townhouses, and then it's us. So everything that we do in terms of participating in this democracy all comes back down to us. So whether we participate in it or not, at the end of the day, it goes back to you. And all of us must play a role. So I just gave you a bit of a synopsis of how our democracy works, understanding the power of our vote, but also breaking it down in terms of the level of impact of who we are and where we are going forward. Because again, if you're not participating, then we don't have a voice. And in this political climate right now, whether you agree with it or not, we have an opportunity to really make a big difference. And so when we come back, I'm going to start breaking down the layout from the federal level to as local can get, so that way you can get an understanding of how our democracy works. We'll be right back. Hello everyone, this is Jamell Henderson, and thank you for tuning into the Vanguard. If you want to know more information, subscribe to our YouTube channel at Young Boss Media TV.